enrollee, came in January to the Crimson Tide, tabbed as the next Marcus Mariota. How about that?
Tagovailoa over the middle to Judy. There he goes. Hits a home run for an Alabama touchdown.
A true freshman from Hawaii won the national title with one throw.
Tagovailoa trying to make up for it. Fires to the end zone. Touchdown! Alabama wins!
8 years later, that same quarterback signed a one-year deal for the veteran minimum. In between, he led the league in passer rating, signed a $212 million contract, and became the face of a franchise.
Tagovailoa hunts the block. Tua on the move, going deep, speed race, and they go to the end zone and caught. Touchdown!
But he never won a playoff game or beat a team when it mattered the most, all while never becoming the player everybody expected. So this is how the last great NFL prospect never evolved. There was a moment in January of 2018 where college football stopped. Alabama was getting dominated by Georgia in the national championship. Jalen Hurts had gone 26-2 as a starter, but Nick Saban benched him at halftime. Out of the tunnel jogged a 19-year-old left-handed kid from Hawaii with a name nobody could pronounce and a confidence that bordered on delusion. He threw 3 touchdowns in the second half. Then with the game tied in overtime on 2nd and 26, he rolled out left and launched a 41-yard bomb to Devonta Smith in the corner of the end zone. Touchdown, Alabama wins, and Tua becomes a legend in real time. That throw made him a star before he ever started a full college game, and it set a bar he would spend the next 8 years trying to clear. Because what Tua did in 2018 wasn't just good, it was historic. He threw 3,966 yards, 43 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. He finished second in the Heisman voting to Kyler Murray. He won the Maxwell Award and the Walter Camp Award. He posted a passer rating of 199.4, the highest in NCAA history at the time, breaking Baker Mayfield's record. Those numbers sound like a video game. You weren't wrong. And here's the thing, he sat out the fourth quarter of 7 games that season because Alabama was blowing teams out so badly. If he played full games, those numbers would have been even more crazy. In 2019, he was even better. Through 9 games, he threw 2,840 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. His passer rating was 206.9. He was on pace to shatter every single season record in the books. He had Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Devonta Smith, and Jalen Waddle running routes for him. The offensive line was full of future NFL starters. Alabama was playing on easy mode, and Tua was the cheat code. Former offensive coordinator Lane Kiffin said it felt like Tua had eyes in the back of his head. He was able to fit balls into windows that shouldn't have been possible. In the Orange Bowl against Oklahoma, while still recovering from an ankle sprain, he went 24-27 with 318 yards and 4 TDs, having more scoring passes than incompletions. But there was already a crack in the armor. In the 2019 SEC Championship game, he sprained his ankle again.
Well, this time it looks like he's holding that right knee, doesn't he?
I can't tell.
And then he hit a wall against Clemson in the title game, throwing 2 interceptions in a 44-16 blowout loss. The first sign that maybe perfection wasn't permanent. Coming into that 2019 season, Tua was a consensus #1 pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. Not Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert, but Tua. He was the face of the next generation. And then, on November 16th, 2019 against Mississippi State, Nick Saban wanted to pull him out. Tua convinced him to stay in for one more drive. 3 plays later, he rolled left, felt pressure, and threw the ball away. 2 defenders landed on him. His hip was dislocated and he broke his nose. Medical staff later said the bleeding was as severe as they'd ever seen. He was carted off the field screaming. His college career as we knew it was over. The surgery took 4.5 hours, the recovery timeline was 6 months minimum, and suddenly, the guy who was the consensus #1 overall pick going into that season was now a medical question mark. Joe Burrow had just put together the greatest single season in college football history at LSU. Justin Herbert had every physical tool you could dream of. Jordan Love was a project with a rocket arm. Jalen Hurts was a proven winner. The 2020 draft was the deepest quarterback class we'd seen in years. But before the hip injury, Tua was still the consensus #1. Teams were literally tanking for him. The Miami Dolphins were the most obvious. They went 5-11 in 2019, but it felt deliberate. They traded away Laramie Tunsil and Minkah Fitzpatrick. They accumulated draft capital like they were hoarding for the apocalypse. Also, they could get their franchise guy. Mel Kiper and other draft analysts worried about more than just the hip though when it came to Tua. They pointed to his size, his history of ankle injuries, and his style of play. Every injury he had suffered happened while he was still scrambling or rolling out to try and make a play. That instinct that made him one of the best in the nation is also what kept getting him injured. The thing about Tua as a prospect was his accuracy. It wasn't just good, it was supposed to be generational. He could put the ball anywhere on the field. His anticipation was off the charts while his processing speed was elite. He was a left-handed quarterback who made everything look effortless. But the hip changed everything. Medical reports were mixed. Some teams still had him as a top 5 pick, others had him falling late to the first round. The Dolphins took him at number 5, and they thought they'd landed their savior.
The Miami Dolphins select Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback, Alabama.
What they didn't know was that they were about to hand him over to the worst possible coach for his development. Brian Flores didn't want Tua Tagovailoa, like at all. It's been reported by multiple sources that he wanted Justin Herbert. He wanted the prototypical big, strong QB, not the 6-foot lefty out of Hawaii/Alabama with injury history. But the front office drafted Tua anyway, and Brian never got over it. Tua said that Flores told him that he sucked every single day. If you woke up every morning and someone told you that you suck at what you do, that you don't belong here, that this other guy should be here instead, how would that feel? Let alone being a 22-year-old and trying to carry a billion-dollar franchise on your shoulders. Tua called Flores a horrible person after they split, and you could see the rift while they played together. The 2020 season was a mess. Tua started 9 games. He was benched in the fourth quarter of multiple games for Ryan Fitzpatrick. The offense was lifeless and the scheme didn't fit him. The staff didn't believe in him. He broke his ribs in week 2 against the Bills and missed 3 games. He came back to a team that was already 1-7. And the entire time the Dolphins were trying to trade for Deshaun Watson. Tua knew it. The whole league knew it. His own team was actively looking for his replacement while he was still trying to figure out how to be an NFL quarterback. Miami spent the first half of the 2021 season openly flirting with trading Tua and significant draft capital to Houston for Deshaun Watson. The front office kicked the tires on a deal that would have sent their own quarterback packing before his rookie contract even got to the end of year 2. But the real damage wasn't the trade rumors, it was the daily erosion of trust. At the end, the 2021 season wasn't much better. In his 13 games, he threw 16 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, posting a 90.1 passer rating. That was nothing special, nothing terrible, but just average. However, behind the scenes stuff was way worse. Players described Flores' style as militaristic. One player called him a dictator. The rules were eyes forward, sit up straight and no talking. At halftime of a Week 17 loss to the Titans, Tua finally snapped. He and Flores got into a heated locker room confrontation. Tua stood up for himself and his teammates. He told Brian that he didn't know how to talk to players, and a week later, B-Flow was fired, and Tua's career got a second chance. Mike McDaniel came from the San Francisco 49ers, walked into that Miami building and told the whole world that Tua was his guy. Not because of the arm strength or the size, but because of the timing and the rhythm. McDaniel was a Yale grad and a Shanahan disciple. He looked at Tua and saw the perfect fit for a wide zone offense built on quick throws, pre-snap motion, and layups. Then the Dolphins traded for Tyreek Hill. Tyreek changed everything. Defenses couldn't double everybody. If they rolled coverage to Hill, Jalen Waddle was one-on-one on the other side. If they played too high, Tua picked them apart underneath. The offense was the fastest in the league and unstoppable. In 2022, Tua led the NFL in passer rating at 105.5. He threw 3,548 yards and 25 touchdowns in just 13 games. The Dolphins made the playoffs for the first time since 2016, but Tua didn't play because of injuries. In 2023, he was even better. He led the league in passing yards with 4,624. He threw 29 touchdowns, made the Pro Bowl. The Dolphins won 11 games, their most since 2008. In September of 2023, the Dolphins hung 70 points on the Broncos. It was the most points in an NFL game in 57 years. They racked up 726 yards and Tua threw 4 touchdown passes with only 3 incompletions. The ball came out in under 3 seconds while the whole thing looked like a track meet. They made the playoffs for the first time in back-to-back seasons in over a decade. In July of 2024, Tua signed a 4-year, $212 million contract extension, $167 million guaranteed, the highest paid player in Dolphins history. On paper, this was the fairy tale. The broken quarterback who overcame a toxic first coach and became a superstar. But unfortunately, the cracks were already showing. The Dolphins never won a playoff game with Tua as the starter. In the 2022 wildcard round, they lost to the Bills even though he didn't play. In the 2023 wildcard, they lost to the Chiefs in -4 wind chill at Arrowhead. Tua's playoff stat line was ugly. 51% completion percentage, 199 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and a 63.9 passer rating. They look cold the entire time. But here's the part that matters the most. The regular season numbers told one story, and the playoff or big game tape told another. And it wasn't just the playoffs. Tua never beat a good team when it mattered. The Dolphins were 0-5 against the Bills under McDaniel. They lost to the Titans, the 49ers, and the Ravens in games that could have defined their 2023 season. When the weather turned cold or when the defense got pressure, they couldn't adjust. The national media started calling the Dolphins something that stuck. Chris Broussard on First Things First called them breakdancers. He said that they were doing the gritty on the sideline in September and at home in January. It stung because it was true. The Dolphins were 14-1 when they scored first, with 3-6 in games that decided by 1 score. They had no fight, and Tua was the captain of that ship. But there was a bigger story here, a darker one that had absolutely nothing to do with weather or big games at all. On September 25th, 2022 against the Bills, Tua took a hit and stumbled getting up. He shook his head, and the Dolphins said it was a back injury. The NFL cleared him to return. 4 days later, he was on Thursday Night Football against the Bengals. In the second quarter, Josh Tupou sacked him. His head snapped back, his fingers curled into the fencing position. The involuntary reflex that tells you there's been a traumatic brain injury. He lay on the turf while the entire country watched. It was the most disturbing thing I've ever seen on a football field. The NFL changed its concussion protocol after that. The league's medical director was fired, the NFL Players Association opened a review of the protocols, and Tua later said he couldn't even remember the play, but the damage was done. Tua has 4 documented concussions in his career. On December 26, 2022 against the Packers, he threw 3 interceptions and went into the protocol again, which cost him the final 2 games of the season. In September 2024 against the Bills, it happened again on national TV by getting hit by Damar Hamlin on a scramble. Later that same season, he considered retiring. His mother begged him to quit. He sat down with his family and his doctors and asked himself if it was even worth playing. He decided to come back. He learned jiu-jitsu to practice falling safely. He wore a Guardian cap. Antonio Pierce, the Raiders coach at the time, said publicly he'd tell Tua to retire. Tony Gonzalez said if it was his son, he'd tell him it's time. But Tua kept playing because that's what quarterbacks do. They play until they can't anymore. But the concussions had changed him. He started seeing ghosts in the pocket. He got rid of the ball faster than ever. The aggression that made him great at Alabama was gone. After that 2023 season, that's when Tua got that big bag. He got the $212 million deal, and that came with a lot of expectations that he wasn't able to shoulder. The deal averaged $53.1 million per year in new money, which made it the second largest 4-year contract in the league at the time, sitting behind Jordan Love's $55 million per year and Joe Burrow's 5-year deal. With that, the expectations exploded. The Dolphins were labeled soft. The breakdancers comment stuck. The team celebrated regular season wins like they'd won the Super Bowl. They did TikTok dances on the sideline. When the games got physical, they disappeared. Tua was a quarterback of a team with no edge. The Tyreek Hill situation in 2024 didn't help. The off-field drama and the house incident meant the team was falling apart at the seams. And Tua, who was supposed to be the leader, didn't have the personality to slow it down, let alone stop it. He was never the fiery, commanding presence. He was a quiet, accurate, nice guy, the kind of quarterback who needs everything to be perfect to succeed. The stats sometimes look better than he actually was. In 2023, the Dolphins ranked 20th in time of possession. They were a feast or famine offense that scored in bunches but couldn't sustain drives. Tua's numbers were inflated by the scheme, and when the scheme stopped working, the numbers fell off a cliff. The contract made him uncuttable until it didn't. Then came 2025 and the floor fell out. Tua started 14 games. He threw 2,660 yards, 20 touchdowns, and a league-leading 15 interceptions. His yards per attempt cratered to 6.9, down from 8.9 in 2022. His QBR was 37.5, the worst of his career. He was leading the league in bad throws, seeing pressure that wasn't there. He was throwing into double teams constantly. The accuracy that was supposed to be his superpower had abandoned him. The Dolphins started 1-6, then they won 5-6 to get back into the playoff race, but Tua was still struggling. The offense couldn't move the ball downfield. The chunk plays that defined the McDaniel offense were gone. The weapons were so thin that Jalen Waddle led the team with only 910 yards receiving. Devon Achane was second with 488. And the third leading receiver was tight end Greg Dulcich with 335. Dulcich was a third-round cast-off who hadn't caught a pass for the Giants the year before. On December 17, 2025, the Dolphins finally benched Tua for Quinn Ewers, a 7th-round rookie. Tua Tagovailoa, the 5th overall pick, the $212 million man, the quarterback who was supposed to save the franchise, was replaced by a guy taken at pick 231. The message was clear. They'd rather see what a rookie could do than watch Tua drown. The Dolphins finished 7-10, then they fired Mike McDaniel. They then had to cut Tyreek Hill in the offseason. Jalen Waddle was traded to Denver before the draft. The weapons were gone, offensive line was broken, and Tua couldn't mask any of it. And so in March of 2026, they cut Tua. The dead cap hit was $99 million, an NFL record. They were paying him to go away. This is where it gets painful, because when you look at the 2020 draft class, Tua was supposed to be the best of them. Joe Burrow went first overall to Cincinnati. He has 5 playoff wins. He led the Bengals to Super Bowl 56. He turned a laughingstock into a perennial playoff contender. Justin Herbert went 6th overall to the Chargers, 1 pick after Tua. He hasn't won a playoff game yet, but he's thrown for over 4,000 yards in 4 of his first 6 seasons. He hasn't been up to snuff in big games either, but the talent is undeniable. Jordan Love went 26th overall to the Packers. He sat for 3 years behind Aaron Rodgers. Then he took over and threw for 4,159 yards and 32 touchdowns in his first starting season. He's also consistently been in the playoffs even after he signed a 4-year, $220 million deal. Jalen Hurts went 53rd overall to the Eagles. He was a 2nd-round project. He took over for Carson Wentz. Then the Eagles almost traded him for Russell Wilson, and then he became a Super Bowl champion. He won Super Bowl 59 MVP, and he's a perennial MVP candidate and always in the playoffs. And then there's Tua. He led the league in passer rating in 2022. He led the league in passing yards in 2023. He has a 96.4 career passer rating, higher than Herbert's. He's 2nd all-time in completion percentage among quarterbacks with at least 1,500 attempts, but he has 0 playoff wins. In his biggest games, he's thrown more interceptions than touchdowns. Against good teams in cold weather, he disappears. Herbert had to learn how to carry a dysfunctional franchise. Love learned patience behind Rodgers, and Hurts learned to read defenses and became a Super Bowl MVP. Tua never did any of that. He was the same quarterback in 2025 that he was in 2018. Accurate, quick, sometimes smart, but unable to create when the play broke down. That's the difference between good and great, and Tua stayed solid. So where does that leave him now? He signed a 1-year, $1.2 million contract with the Atlanta Falcons, the vet men, from $53 million a year to $1.2. He's competing with Michael Penix for the starting job. Penix is a 1st-round pick who's coming off a torn ACL he suffered in November, and the typical recovery timeline is 9 to 12 months. Falcons insiders say the quarterback competition is legitimate, but until Penix is fully cleared for 11-on-11 work, Tua has to be considered the starter. The Falcons brought Tua in as an insurance/bridge quarterback. The Atlanta weapons might actually be better than Miami. The Falcons have Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and Kyle Pitts. Their offensive line ranked 10th in run blocking and 16th in pass blocking. The Dolphins were 27th and 29th. Kevin Stefanski runs a system that relies on timely release and accuracy, which fits Tua's strengths. The problem is the Falcons see him as a placeholder. If he loses the competition to Penix, he might never start again. If he wins it and struggles, he'll get benched again. And if he gets another concussion, that might be it. He's 28 years old. He's made $124 million in career earnings. He could walk away tomorrow and never work again. That's not the point. The point is that Tua Tagovailoa was supposed to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of his generation, and instead, he's fighting for his NFL life against a rookie with one working knee. He came into the league as a hero and leaves Miami as a cautionary tale. He didn't fail because he wasn't talented enough, he failed because he never changed. So there you have it. Watch this next video if you haven't already and subscribe if you're new. Thanks for watching.